Hello, I'm Rick Bine. I'm on the Geography faculty at IUPUI. Today I'm going to talk about cats on the farm. There are really three types of cats we have in this country. We have house cats, which stay in the house, hang out with people, even sleep with them, this sort of thing. Very pampered type of animals. And we have feral cats that really avoid people. They find their food wherever. They eat rodents and this sort of thing. And then we have dooryard cats. Now the difference between these cats are a little bit complicated, but I want to tell you on our farm we didn't abuse animals in any way. If the animals were sick or whatever, that we put them out of their misery, but we respected the animals in that respect, and well, our animals as they were. So anyway, the difference between, well, feral cat, as you know, is semi-wild. The dooryard cat is a cat that hangs around the house but doesn't go in the house. It stays outside. It depends on table scraps and other food that people would give it. And these cats don't come in the house. And this was a typical arrangement that we had on our place. My mother said no cats in the house. So we didn't have any house cats for a while. But most of the time we had those two, the dooryard cats and the feral cats. Feral cats were important on the farm because they collected rodents, ate them, mice and rats particularly. And so they were important. They didn't have anything to do with people. They're important because people were there, but otherwise they kind of stayed away from people. The dooryard cats were those that became tamed, basically. And they got used to being around the outside of the house and the table scraps that were there. Taming them was another story. And the person that became more involved in taming the cats was my sister Jeannie. And she would go and find the nests of the female cats, of the feral cats, and tame the babies. And she would bring get those babies used to humans. And they liked humans, and so they would come around, and as they grew up, they became dooryard cats. And so this was the kind of thing they would do. As she got more and more cats, they would hang around the house. It was hard what do you do with these baby kittens that are still nursing? Well, she had one cat that was barren, didn't have any kittens, but for some reason, when the little kittens would come up and nurse on her, she began to lactate. And so this cat was the one that sort of became the foster parent for the kittens that Jeannie found around. Jeannie would follow the feral cats and see where they went, and then go in and then capture the babies. And then she'd bring them to this barren cat. And she gave this barren cat a name called Bosomy. And Bosomy would take care of the baby kittens and raise them up, sort of to speak. We would give them food and outside the house. A lot of times it was table scraps. And when they milked the cows, they would come in and hang around the barn there, and we'd pour a pan full of milk for them, and they would enjoy that. And so they were, they got real accustomed to us. It was interesting as you opened the back door, all these dooryard cats would come dashing up to the door, and you could hardly get down the steps because there were so many of them. And we had about 6 or 7 steps getting down to the ground from the back door. And so I remember one time rushing out. I had something to do, and I was late, and I came storming out of the door, and the cats all came up the steps. And as I looked, I was just going to skip steps. I mean, take 3 or 4 steps at a time. And I made my first leap, and as I started to come down, I couldn't see a place to put my foot. There was all cats there, and I remember I crushed one of these kittens, or these cats. And I really felt terrible about that, so I quit my mission wherever I was going and tried to take care of this cat, and actually I killed it. And so I really felt bad about that. And I remember taking it out into the field next to the house there and buried it and put a cross on the cat's grave. I must have figured that cat was a good Catholic or something. And it stayed there for a while until they plowed the field, and the whole thing, they had a box on it, a little cardboard box to mark the grave. The plow just turned it over and never saw it again. But anyway, this was the situation with cats, the dooryard cats. And occasionally we would take those cats in the house against my mother's will. I remember catching a feral cat one time. I caught it by throwing a blanket over it when I got close to it so I wouldn't go and scratch me. Because you catch a feral cat, your hands are going to be shredded with its claws and their teeth. And so inside the blanket, they couldn't do that. They could struggle around in there. But I brought it into the house, let it loose, and that thing went wild. And it just started leaping. It tried to go through the windows and crashed into the windows and jumped up on top of the curtain rods and knocked down the curtains and went onto the mantelpiece, and all of Mom's treasured vases crashed on the floor and just trashed the house in a matter of 5 seconds. And in desperation, I opened the back door, and of course the cat dashed out. And in the meantime, then I tried to repair the damage. And of course, it wasn't. I was grounded for a couple of weeks after that. And then my sister Jeannie would bring the house door cats. She'd come in and she would she threw away her dolls, but she put all the clothes on the cats. And they were wearing all the doll clothes and running around. Sometimes they'd go outside like that. And one time she put one in a closet, and she sort of forgot about it, and the cat stayed in there for a week. My mother discovered it, and the cat was just still alive after all that time. And the clothes that she put on him were full of excrement. It was a real mess, and a lot of it had dried into the hair of the cat, so they had to shave the cat's hair to get her free from all that mess. And but anyway, that Jeannie got grounded for that, and so we tried to. We sort of learned our lesson about that. And I remember one lady came out and wanted one of our cats. And she said, "Well, I'd like to just thank one of your kittens." So we gave her one of the kittens. And she was my piano instructor, and so she got this cat and did everything that the veterinarian required. Did all these things, these shots, and all this stuff, and all this food. You know, inside of a year, that cat was about 2 times the size of his siblings that we had on the farm. It was amazing how this cat became huge and very used to people climbing on him and whatever, and getting in your lap when you sat down. And so it was very used to that sort of thing. It was interesting to see the comparison. And then somebody gave us a cat. It was a half Siamese cat, so it had some prestige. And so we got to keep that cat in the house. And my sister named it White Tree Limb. I don't know where she got that name, but the cat was white. And so we had this cat around, and we got kind of used to having a house cat. And so that was the end of that, those sort of things we had, those experiences we had with the cats on the farm. And so I've never had a cat as a pet until we were living in the Sudan and Khartoum at one point. And my twins were now 3, 4 years old, and 5, and we one of the embassy people American embassy had gotten one of these cats into kittens and tamed it. It turned out the cat was deaf and had all kinds of disabilities, and there in that part of the world, the cats are feral. Most of them, hardly any house cats at all. So these feral cats roamed around, and this was one of the feral cat kittens, and they treated it like a house cat. And they got ready to leave. The embassy people, they stay maybe 2 or 3 years in a place, and then the State Department moves them somewhere else or takes them back to the States for a while to get re-Americanized. And so this cat, they didn't know what to do with the cat, so we're going to be here for a while. They gave us this cat, and the children were delighted. They loved this cat and stayed at home. And even though it was deaf, they didn't matter. I liked it. Hung around with them and all that. But we had a problem because on our house there, we didn't really have any windows per se. It was desert, and there weren't a lot of mosquitoes or anything like that, hardly any mosquitoes. It was just too dry. The hot air just moved in and out, and we weren't really, it was a little bit cooler in the house. And so but the cat was in there, but the door had these bars on it that were sort of a grid, and the cats could come in and out of the house, including the feral cats. And one time at night, the feral cats would invade our house from time to time and see if we left any food out or whatever. And, but they saw this cat, and the kids had named it Frosty. So they come in and beat up our cat, and beat up Frosty, and they would chew on his ears, and in the morning he would come down and he was all battered and his ears were bleeding and whatever. So we didn't know what to do about that. We put some medicine on it and stuff like that. But then one of the locals there that was there, around there came up to me one day and says, "You know, your cat eats better than we do." That was a little bit shocking to think about that. We were living in an area that was being developed in Khartoum. It was a new suburb sort of thing. So there was a lot of empty lots around there, and there were people sort of homeless, building their huts, hanging there looking for jobs here and there, and finding food whenever they could. They'd go down and fish in the Blue Nile, which was about 300 yards from our house. But they were there, and they said, "That cat eats better than we do." It was interesting because about a week later, Frosty disappeared. And I'm sure it ended up on somebody's dinner plate. The twins were devastated, but we weren't able to do much about it. And there weren't any other embassy people with cats. But after that, we did come back to the States. We did have a cat for a while when we came to Indianapolis, but the kids wanted it. I said, "All right, you're going to take care of the cat. You have to change the litter box and whatever." And they didn't do that. So I gathered up the kids, took the cat. We went to the Humane Society and let the cat off there. They were crying all the way and crying all the way back. And I was like the devil or something like that. And, but anyway, it's an interesting relationship people have with cats. I would say over half the Americans have cats in their houses, and people I talk to. And I belong to a men's group that gets together once in a while. And I asked them, "Any of you guys got cats?" "Oh yeah, every one of them," raised their hands. And I was the only one without a cat in my house. I think something about cats, I would sort of become, biased about them. So that's my cat story.